Kimbo Slice was a primal force of nature. Raw, unrefined, yet undeniably poetic. He rose from the bloody, sweat-stained backyards of Miami, where fists spoke truths and reputations were carved in concrete. A warrior born outside the system, he carried the soul of the streets into the bright lights of the cage to become a symbol of grit, heart, and unbridled authenticity. Kimbo was living proof that greatness does not need polish, but it demands passion. In every punch, in every breath, he embodied the essence of human struggle, from survival to legend. And this is why the legend of Kimbo Slice is the first story we must showcase in the debut season of Dark Side of the Cage. Episode 1, Kimbo Slice, the rise of a backyard brawler. What is up, my friends? My name is Robin Black. I was the creative consultant for season 1 of Dark Side of the Cage, a true privilege. I also got to coordinate and choreograph the fight scenes for the reenactments. So awesome. I love this series. I asked Vice, hey, can I dig a little bit deeper into these episodes? They said, knock yourself out. So here we are. We're going to dig into what made Kimbo so special as a fighter. Why was he able to generate so much energy when he threw punches? We're going to look at why everybody loved Kimbo Slice, and they really, truly did. We're also going to look at why he is better than every YouTuber who has ever come after him, including you, Jake Paul, maybe especially you, Jake Paul. Look, we're going to talk to Boss Rutan, a legend who was friends with Kimbo and trained Kimbo, and a whole bunch more. Let's dig into it right now. Bing. This is Deeper Into the Cage, Kimbo Slice. If you're really going to dig into Kimbo Slice, there's a lot to get into. One of the most legendary combat humans ever of all time. The way he behaved, the way he fought, and the way he interacted with other human beings. But we're going to start out by looking at what made him special when he fought. You know, why he transferred energy so much. The fact that he actually was more defensively sound than you think. The way that he was in balance all the time, finding his way back, and the way he was incredibly kinesthetically aware and had unbelievable instincts. This is a segment. Segment? Do we have segments? Is this a show? Is this a podcast? What is this? This is a segment I'm going to call Kinesthetic Kimbo. Just before we dig into all this Kimbo footage, I want to thank Mike Imber, Icy Mike. He licensed us high-resolution Kimbo footage. This ain't a copy of a copy of a copy of a VHS. This is the real shit. Mike Imber, Icy Mike, thank you for giving us the good shit. Let's dig in. Okay, so when you think about Kimbo, people are like, he had crazy power. First of all, power is not something you have. I used to like to say power is something you create, but it's actually something you transfer. You transfer energy from the ground through your legs, through your hips and your core, and out the knuckles of the balled fist. And that's what Kimbo did. He was able to hit so hard because he was able to transfer energy from the ground up. Let's take a look. All right, watch the body. It's full body. Kimbo's always punching with his body, his entire totality of self, right here. Watch the feet and the legs, the hips. It's all body. It's all Kimbo. This is incorrect by any stretch of the imagination, stepping with the right hand, but it gets him athletically positioned to explode here. He was a football player coming up, so his instincts of his body, using his full body, uppercuts and hooks. Watch the hips. Watch the hips right here. Hip, hip, and hip again. Feet, legs, hips, core, upper body, out the knuckles. And you see here, he works his way right into the punches. And then he's hunting from here. You should never reach, but if you are, you better tangle the weapons. The instincts were strong in Kimbo. Always moving his head and always striking. This was the sequence where he just worked his way. This is one of his great fights. He has so many great fights. Finished his man in this corner right here. So yeah, of course, we know Kimbo hit hard, but it wasn't just about how hard he hit. This idea, he got crazy power. That's just TV talk. It's about where you are in balance and in the ability to hit and not get hit. And Kimbo's instincts were phenomenal. Let's take a look. Watch. Imagine Kimbo's a car and he's got his headlights in the dark. He's always keeping his man within the headlights in the dark. You see it here. Watch this sequence right here. He's gonna turn this corner ever so slightly and get his man back into those headlights. Bird dog him a little bit. The jab's gonna hit really hard right here. Pink. The right hand misses, off balance, has to get back into position. Now he's aware that his head's in danger. Watch him moving his head as he gets back into position where he can strike again. People underestimate the ability of Kimbo to make people miss. Watch here. This is automatic. This is intuitive. This is just positional awareness. Now he'll strike his way back in and then try to keep his head moving again, and he does, but he'll walk into one. You're not gonna be perfect, right, Pink? That one drops Kimbo, so super smart. Take away the space, go to 0 range here, tie him up, gather a second, and when you separate, he pushes forward immediately, keeping his man backing up and off balance so he can't hurt him. Kimbo hit hard, yes, but he was always in position to hurt you, protect himself, and he was awesome. Kimbo also had something that people refer to as fingertip knowledge, just the awareness and the instinct to do the right thing because you're so immersed in the moment. And you're gonna see it right here. Take a look. All right here. This man never fought in rings at this point, but he's got his man cornered. He's keeping him in position, controlling the body, controlling the head, and overwhelming his man right here. This really is beautiful positioning in the corner, and it's fingertip knowledge. But watch this. Draws the right hand. Watch where Kimbo goes. He slides right underneath. Now he's connected. This is brilliant. He's going to pass it to his left hand, still aware, and when you can see into a man's ear, it's time to pop him. Drops him right there. That is honestly a beautiful, beautiful series of combat right there. His man would ultimately get back up, and then he would work him right back into the exact same corner and overwhelm him and finish him there. Kimbo Slice had unreal fighting instincts, fingertip knowledge, and the ability to innovate and improvise in real time. He was a very, very special combat sportsman, and he was always, always cool afterwards. Everybody loved Kimbo. That's in fact going to be something we're going to talk about later on in this show. Is this a show? Podcast? What is this? We're going to look at one more sequence of Kimbo combat later on in this show. This is a show. And of course, it's the one where he got his name, Kimbo Slice, because he sliced the guy open. At the time when we watched it, we thought his eye was hanging out. We'll look at that one later. Right now, we're going to look at why everybody loved Kimbo.
Kimbo was somebody that if you knew him, you loved him.
That's a special human being.
I respected what he did. I knew where he came from. I knew how he had to get there.
I probably should have done Everybody Loves Kimbo first, but I know you wanted to watch fighting, right? Like, you wanted to watch because Kimbo's fights are so epic. But one of the most memorable things about Kimbo Slice was everybody loved him. Let me tell you a personal story. My job as the creative consultant is to come to people and say, we're making this episode about Kimbo Slice. So I'm going to his son. We're making this episode about your father. I'm going to Icy Mike, one of his best friends, and saying, we're making this episode about your best friend. And what happens sometimes, this series is called Dark Side of the Cage. There's Dark Side of the Ring and there's Dark Side of Comedy. People are aware of it. They don't need to be dark in that sense. But when you approach Icy Mike Imber, you approach Kimbo's son and you say, we want to tell stories about your father, we want to tell stories about your friend. They say, hey, it's called Dark Side. I can't do anything that will affect his legacy. It was my job to explain to them, we love Kimbo Slice. And this is a love letter to him. Also, once you start talking about Kimbo Slice, you can't find anyone to say a bad word about him. So when you watch the episode Dark Side of the Cage, episode 1, Kimbo Slice, when you watch it, you'll see this. This really is a love letter to Kimbo. Why is it called Dark Side of the Cage? Ultimately, the man died. He passed away. And it's sad when a great man, a great hero, an inspiring person, a passionate person, a remarkable human being dies. That's the dark side of all of this in this episode. But it's one you have to see, and I'm really, really proud of this episode. It's a beautiful episode 1. But you'll see, yeah, man, people loved Kimbo Slice. I just wrote the word coordinating and put a K on it because it looked cool. But what I wanted to talk to you about was 2 things. One, what it was like for pro fighters to train Kimbo, who's super raw at the time. His instincts, like we went over, were phenomenal. His body was amazing. You know, he had a good feel. He understood fighting on both primal levels and smart levels. But to learn to be a pro MMA fighter, and he fought a former boxing heavyweight champion in his first pro fight, by the way. Do people realize that? Ray Mercer, he fought a former professional boxing heavyweight champion in his first fight. I don't mean to be a spoiler, but he submitted him, all right? To train Kimbo from the street to submitting a former heavyweight champion in his first pro MMA fight, I wanted to talk to somebody who knew him and trained him and loved him, Boss Rutan.
Yeah, he's a good dude, man. He's a good dude. So, and the things he did, you know, with a lot of people don't know all the backstories, the injuries and everything that he had, you know, but he just fought himself through it, you know, and he just kept on fighting. And I'd say, well, he was doing really good. He did a few. I remember with James Thompson, he did a backdoor escape. And we worked on that like freaking weeks in advance. And I go like, dude, you did a freaking backdoor escape. That's pretty impressive to do it on your third fight or something. So, yeah, it was good.
Were you working with him when he fought Ray Mercer?
Yeah, that's where I started. That's actually the game plan. You will see, because I told him in the game plan, he says, a boxer. I say, he's a boxer, but it's very hard to box backwards. I say, when the fight starts, I want you to cross your hands in front of your face and just walk straight up to him. And I push him against the fence. That's exactly what he did. Push him against the fence, start kneeing him, and I got him in a guillotine choke. So, yeah, that was good. He was listening. And you know as well as I do, you know, in the beginning when you fight, well, it took me freaking 8 fights or something to finally start listening to my corner, because your mind is really weird. Like I always talk about that people, they believe they can fight because they can spar in a dojo. I go, it's nothing compared to the real thing under pressure, you know, because there's no room for mistakes. There you make a mistake, so what? There you're going to get knocked out or you're going to get tapped with a submission. So it's very rare to see a person right away. Maybe I had 2 guys and I have hundreds of students that immediately started listening. And Kimbo was one of them.
You know, Kimbo was a ferocious fighter, but tell me what he was like when you were just hanging out, you know, when training was done and you guys would go get coffee and hang out.
Dude, we had that group of his entourage. It was always fun. It was like Comedy Central. You'll be laughing all day long. We go to a restaurant. You'll be laughing 85% of the time because everybody's cracking jokes and doing fun stuff. You go to a Walmart. What he would do, we go to, let's say, a different state. Then they go to Walmart, everybody. They buy all these games, these PlayStations. They have all these connected rooms. They would open all the doors so everybody goes to one room, probably the room for Mike. I see Mike. Then they put all the TVs there. So now you got 4 TVs on every side, the PlayStation's on it, and then everybody started playing and challenging each other. That's how they killed time. It was hilarious. And then Kimbo, before the fight, he would only watch nature movies, like lions slaughtering other animals. That was his thing, because he loved that. You know, he got really dark. It was with fighting time. So the switch with him, it's a big switch, you know, like because he's the nicest person you ever meet. If you see him on the street, I mean, people say, "Oh, Boss, you're no," to compare to Kimbo. I mean, it was insanity. Everywhere you walk, everybody knows this guy. You know, and all the people at Best Buy, they wanted to help us. We had like 12 helpers around us because everybody wanted to be involved with Kimbo Slice. You know, and then the way he is to the people, he was just a good guy.
Can you, before I let you go with gratitude, can you try to tell me one thing about Kimbo Slice we might not know?
I know that, you know, after a fight, after the 6 weeks of not smoking weed, you know, don't think that you can take 2 drags from whatever weed he's smoking. That I can say, because I fell victim to that. And I go like this, right? And they go, "Give me 1 second." He says, "Boss, no, it's really strong." I go, "Dude, I'm from Holland. I'm okay." You know? And I take the second sip. My whole night was good. I had the bucket with ice. I threw the ice out because I was heading in front of me. I was constantly throwing. There were people in line waiting for autograph, but I was completely done. I could not move again. So that, you know, if he still would be alive and he says, "Hey, take a drag from this is really good weed," you go like, "Let's take a half. Let's not take the whole one," because boy, it was really strong.
So putting together this episode of Dark Side of the Cage, was so amazing, right? It's so cool. My job, if I can share some personal stories with you, can we do that? Can we share some personal stories? As the creative consultant, I was part of helping pull together some of the factual elements of the story and reaching out to these people and pulling them in to talk about Kimbo. But I also got to do fight coordinating. And some people are really interested in different types of processes, so I thought I would share a little bit about it with you. When you're the fight coordinator, somebody will be talking, say Boss Rutan, and he'll say, well, Kimbo was trying to learn X, Y, and Z. And then in the creation of an episode for television, you will then do what they call a recreation, where someone, in this case an actor named Denzel Phillip, played Kimbo, and he's got to physically do these things. My job is to help him do these things. Now, throughout the course of this season, we had some really high-level pro fighters, really high level. We'll talk to you about it. Really high level. We'll talk about it in the future. But also some people like Denzel, who had a little bit of boxing experience, but he was a football player. Kimbo was a football player. So when you go and you're trying to have elements where you're teaching somebody how to fight, in this case teaching Kimbo how to kick, teaching Kimbo how to do jiu-jitsu, what you actually had was Kimbo, a super athletic football player, learning to kick and do jiu-jitsu. Well, Denzel, our actor, was a super athletic football player, and we simply taught him to kick and taught him to do jiu-jitsu on the set and shot it. Brilliant team, brilliant director, brilliant crew of people, and we literally shot Denzel, again, super athletic football player, emulating Kimbo, super athletic football player, learning jiu-jitsu and kicking. Sometimes when you're shooting these, you run out of bodies or somebody's not there for the day, so I had to do some of the jiu-jitsu scenes. See if you can find me in the episode. But it's super fun. I'll share with you guys some more parts about the process of making shows like this, because it's so fun and it's so cool, and I think you might be curious. And now, Kimbo is greater than every YouTuber ever.
He absolutely helped make YouTube a household name.
I don't know how old you are. If you're old like me, you remember before YouTube, right? And one of the very first ever YouTube superstars, influencers, whatever you want to call it, was Kimbo, right? And the episode actually digs a lot into this, and it's really fascinating. Mike Imber is a brilliant guy. And Mike Imber and Kimbo worked together to kind of populate through adult websites and later YouTube until Kimbo became a true YouTube sensation. We hear that shit all the time. Kimbo was the first YouTube sensation. And of course, he worked his way up to, giant arenas all over, mainstream television, which was fascinating. It's so crazy when you look at, of course, I added this YouTube stuff because part of my job is to provoke people and see if they want to watch this, right? And you mentioned Jake Paul or Logan Paul or KSI or these guys, and people want to argue about it. The modern model of YouTube is provoke, right? The modern model is create beef, get people mad, get people to say your fight was fake, get people to hate you. That is the modern YouTube model. They don't all do it, but it's the easiest way to create engagement on YouTube. That wasn't Kimbo. Kimbo was intense. Kimbo was compelling. Kimbo was ferocious, but Kimbo wasn't creating beef. In fact, he will walk his way in and say, it's time to eat. He'll fight his ass off, and then he'll hug at the end. Kimbo was beloved. Kimbo didn't stoop to the level that they stoop to now. One of the wild things about it, and this is just some off the top of my head theory, is Kimbo was the first true YouTube sensation. So now YouTubers are migrating towards combat. Jake Paul, and yes, Jake Paul is an actual fighter. He's actually trained really hard, and he deserves some amount of respect for that. But to go from the world of YouTube and move to combat, Kimbo pioneered all of that. Jake Paul, Logan Paul, KSI, they all started fighting. Kimbo came long before all of them, and I think Kimbo will be remembered long after all of them. Kimbo Slice, literally, I think literally is the wrong word, but Kimbo Slice figuratively created YouTube. But first, check this out, my friends.
Either this guy was gonna kill me or I was gonna have to kill him. It was no holds barred. These men take mixed martial arts very seriously.
After the fight, we drank all night long. It was crazy.
Guys have incredible legacy, but they tarnish it.
All these guys are total juice heads. All that stuff is swept under the rug.
He never wanted to be the poster boy. He's the anti-hero.
You want to ruin this guy's life when he's probably at the peak of his career.
Was he murdered?
You don't want to say on TV.
Rhonda just took concussion after concussion. Yeah, you should be back to training in a few days and be fine. No, you should not.
UFC was 70 million in debt.
One of the Yakuza bodyguards pulled the gun, put it to my head.
It's either you or me. I'll tell you right now, I'm only going out one way.
Dark Side of the Cage. New series premieres Wednesday, January 8th at 10 on Vice.
All right, I promised you earlier in the Hangout. What are we doing here? Is this a Hangout? We hanging out talking about Kimbo? I promised you earlier in our Hangout that I was gonna bring you the footage of when Kimbo earned the name Kimbo Slice. And we know he was fighting a man named Big D. Why did they call him Big D? I don't know. And here it is. Drawn Big D in, and like all of Kimbo's action, his feet are planted in such a way that he can deliver big punches. You see him, he's really flowing in this situation, and that's a big, enormous hook, full body, left hook, turns the knuckles, already does damage. Big D is saying, I don't know how big my D is today. Maybe I'll take a break, but they continue to fight. Kimbo draws punches here. And in the episode of Dark Side of the Cage, Kimbo's sister talks about watching that and how crazy it was. But right here, watch for this. Big. That is truly a beautiful, perfectly placed left hand, turns the knuckles, slices the side of his face open. We can look at that whole sequence again. Now, when he's saying, hit me, of course that's affecting his man psychologically, but he's also getting him to really commit to punches. And that's what he harvests. He harvests that heavy, fully committed right hand. You see it right here. He's gonna throw the left and a really fully committed right, full body. Kimbo gets underneath it and he's up in position. This is his totality of body. Big turns, every fiber in his body is committed to that one. And that's the one that completely finishes off the eye. You figured it was over here. Maybe he did. Maybe he should have been called Big D, because he actually, with one eye, he continued. And of course, Kimbo put an end to that one. It's all left still, watch. He can see it, he's so smart, he's so aware. Left hand, that right is just enough to measure for a left. And this was the day that Kimbo became Kimbo Slice. All right, before we wrap this up, let me say thank you for hanging with me and digging into the legend, Kimbo Slice. It was a privilege, a true privilege to dissect some of this. It was also an incredible privilege to work on this episode and all the episodes of season 1 of Dark Side of the Cage. We've been working on this for a year. I also want to thank Vice. I literally called and said, hey, can I just make something and dig a little bit deeper into the Kimbo Slice and some of these episodes? And they're like, yeah, knock yourself out. And hopefully people will like it. If you're still watching, you probably liked it. So thank you. It is season 1 of Dark Side of the Cage. The premiere is January 8th. It is on Vice. In Canada, where I live, it's on Crave. Kimbo Slice is episode 1. I don't know what I'm allowed to tell you about, but there are some amazing episodes and moments, and we've been working on it for a year, and you wait till you see it. But we got Nick Diaz, man. This is a Nick Diaz episode. When's the last time you seen Nick Diaz sit down and do a long-form interview? He did that for us, and it's amazing. It's one of the all-time great episodes in the entire Dark Side series. We got Diego Sanchez, Evan Tanner. Amazing story, Evan Tanner. Ronda Rousey. Pride, the rise and fall of Pride. Chase, drop in some Japanese cover art here and magazines and stuff. So cool that we're taking you to Japan to be able to see the rise and fall of the great Pride. So much more. We called up people, Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, George St. Pierre, you guys want to be in this series? And they were like, yeah, man, we'll do it. So it's super cool. A real privilege. And a privilege for you to hang out and watch this with me. We will be back. Dark Side of the Cage, Season 1, Kimbo Slice Episode 1, January 8th on Vice and on Crave. Follow us on Vice TV and follow me on Robin Black Martial Arts. And I'm going to share a whole bunch of pieces from this in the coming weeks and months. And thank you so much. Until next time, enjoy the hostilities, my friends.
Either this guy was gonna kill me or I was gonna have to kill him.
It was no holds barred. These men take mixed martial arts very seriously.
After the fight, we drank all night long. It was crazy.
Guys have incredible legacy, but they tarnish it.
All these guys are total juice heads. All that stuff is swept under the rug.
He never wanted to be the poster boy. He's the anti-hero.
You don't want to ruin this guy's life when he's probably at the peak of his career.
Was he murdered?
You don't want to say on TV.
Rhonda just took concussion after concussion. Yeah, you should be back to training in a few days and be fine. No, you should not.
UFC was 70 million in debt.
One of the Yakuza bodyguards pulled the gun, put it to my head.
It's either you or me. I'll tell you right now, I'm only going out one way.
Dark Side of the Cage. New series premieres Wednesday, January 8th at 10 on Vice.